I was stunned when my husband's mistress showed up pregnant at my door. When I opened the door, I thought she was lost. She was young, mid-20s at most, dressed in a fitted black coat like she had somewhere important to be. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the strap of her purse, shifting her weight like she wasn't sure if she should even be here. I had never seen her before in my life, but something about the way she looked at me made my stomach twist. Then she spoke. "I'm pregnant, with Ryan's baby." My brain short-circuited. For a moment I thought I had misheard her. I just stood there, gripping the edge of the door, trying to process the words that had just come out of her mouth. Ryan. My husband. The man I had built my life with for 10 years. The man who kissed me on the forehead every morning before work, who sat beside me on the couch at night watching mindless TV, who told me I was the best thing that ever happened to him. He had gotten another woman pregnant. I swallowed, my mouth suddenly dry. "What?" She flinched, like she wasn't prepared for me to actually respond. I know this is a shock," she stammered, reaching into her bag with shaky hands. I thought you should know. I didn't know about you at first, I swear. He told me he was getting a divorce. I only found out a few weeks ago that that wasn't true." She pulled out a small ultrasound photo and held it out toward me. I didn't take it. I couldn't. My gaze locked onto the grainy image, my body frozen in place. This was real. Not some cruel prank, not a misunderstanding. Real. My husband had been sleeping with this woman, lying to both of us, and now there was a baby on the way. My stomach churned violently, and for a moment I thought I might actually be sick. She tucked the ultrasound back into her bag when she realized I wasn't going to take it. "Please, say something." I forced my throat to work, my voice coming out weaker than I wanted. "How long?" She hesitated. "Almost a year." The numbness in my chest cracked, and something sharp and ugly took its place. Almost a year. For almost a year, Ryan had been coming home to me, sitting across from me at the dinner table, kissing me goodnight, while also sneaking around with her. He had looked me in the eyes every single day and lied to my face without a second thought. I clenched my jaw, gripping the doorframe as I tried to push down the wave of fury threatening to take over. She looked down, shifting awkwardly. We met at his gym. It wasn't supposed to be serious, but then things got complicated. I almost laughed at how pathetic that word sounded. Complicated was forgetting an anniversary or missing a dinner reservation. This was a complete betrayal. Does he know? I finally asked, my voice steadier than I expected. She nodded, biting her lip. I told him last week. He freaked out, said he wasn't ready, that this wasn't what he wanted. He told me to take care of it. Her hands trembled as she placed them over her stomach, like she was protecting herself from his words all over again. I couldn't do that. And when I realized he had been lying about everything, I knew I had to come to you. I had never wanted to hurt someone so badly in my entire life. Not her, Ryan. My husband, the man who had sworn to love and respect me, had not only cheated, but the second things got difficult, he tried to make the problem disappear. I could see it all so clearly now. He had spun her a story, promised her a future, made her believe she was the only one, and when reality hit, he had thrown her aside like she meant nothing. He had done the same thing to me. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but one thing was clear. Ryan wasn't getting away with this. Not this time. I exhaled slowly, stepping back from the doorway. "Come inside." She blinked, caught off guard. "Are you sure?" I nodded, my grip tightening on the doorknob. "Yeah, if everything you're saying is true, then you and I have a lot to talk about." She hesitated for a second, then nodded and stepped inside. I closed the door behind her, my mind already racing with what needed to happen next. Ryan had spent the last year playing both of us. It was time to return the favor. She sat on the couch, hands folded in her lap, avoiding my gaze. I watched her carefully, trying to decide what I felt. Anger, betrayal, some twisted sense of relief that I wasn't the only one Ryan had lied to. Maybe it was all of it at once. The worst part was how calm I felt on the outside. My world had just imploded, but instead of breaking down, my mind had gone into sharp, calculated focus. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to scream. That wasn't how Ryan was going to pay for this. She cleared her throat, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never wanted to hurt you." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Then why are you here?" Her fingers tightened in her lap. "Because you deserve to know the truth. I thought he really was leaving you. He made it sound like things were already over, like you were just waiting to finalize everything." She exhaled slowly, shaking her head. I was stupid to believe him. I wanted to tell her she was. I wanted to tell her that believing a man who lies so easily is dangerous, that she should have looked deeper, questioned more. But I didn't, because I knew exactly how convincing Ryan could be. I had spent 10 years believing every word that came out of his mouth. "How did you find out he was lying?" I asked. "I noticed little things," she admitted. "He never let me come over. He always had an excuse. He was renovating, or it was a mess, or you still technically lived there." She looked up at me then, like she was measuring how much I could take. But the biggest thing was that he would disappear for hours, sometimes days, and when I asked why, he'd get defensive. One day I checked his social media, and there you were, happy, married, no sign that anything was ending. A bitter taste filled my mouth. Ryan hadn't even tried to cover his tracks. He had built 2 separate lives, keeping us just far enough apart that we wouldn't compare notes. But now, his secrets had caught up to him. She hesitated before speaking again. "When I told him I was pregnant, I don't know. I thought he'd step up, that maybe I meant more to him than just some fling." Her voice broke slightly. "But he panicked. He told me it was a mistake, that he wasn't ready, that I should handle it." My stomach twisted. I could picture him saying it so clearly, acting like a baby with some inconvenience he could brush aside, the same way he had brushed aside his marriage, his vows, his responsibilities. I had spent so many years thinking I was lucky to have him, that I had found a good man, someone who would stand beside me no matter what. Now, all I could see was a coward who ran the second his lies caught up with him. She dropped her head into her hands. "I feel so stupid. I really thought he loved me. I should have felt some satisfaction in hearing that, but I didn't, because I knew exactly how she felt. Ryan had a way of making you feel like you were the most important person in his world, until you weren't." I walked to the coffee table and picked up my phone. "Does he know you came here?" She shook her head. "No, I figured he'd just try to talk me out of it. He probably would have, or he would have lied, spun some story to make me think she was crazy, anything to keep his perfect little world from crumbling, but it was too late for that." I pulled up my messages and stared at Ryan's name. I could confront him now, call him, demand answers, scream at him until my voice gave out. But what would that accomplish? He would lie, beg, maybe even cry. He'd promised to fix things, to be better. I had seen him do it before. Not for cheating, but for smaller betrayals. Little lies he had told over the years that I had foolishly forgiven. He always knew exactly what to say to make me stay. Not this time. I looked at her again, the woman carrying my husband's child. She wasn't my enemy. She was another one of his victims. And I knew, without a doubt, that if I left this in his hands, he would find a way to hurt both of us again. I set my phone down and met her eyes. "You want to ruin him?" She blinked. "What?" "Ryan has spent the last year playing both of us. He thought he could lie to you, betray me, and walk away without consequences." My voice was steady, the plan forming as I spoke. "I say we show him what happens when he underestimates the women in his life." Her lips parted slightly, like she hadn't expected this. Maybe she thought I'd throw her out, blame her, hate her for what had happened, but I wasn't wasting my energy on the wrong person. Ryan had destroyed my marriage. The least I could do was return the favor. She sat up straight, something flickering in her expression. "What exactly do you have in mind?" I grabbed a pen and a notepad from the drawer, flipping to a clean page. "Let's start with everything you know about him. His habits, his routines, the lies he's told you. If we're going to take him down, we need to know everything." She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, let's do it." Ryan had no idea what was coming. We spent the next hour gathering everything, every text, every excuse, every fake promise Ryan had made. The more we pieced together, the clearer it became Ryan had never been as smart as he thought. He had told her he was at work when he was really with me. He had told me he was at the gym when he was really with her. He recycled the same lies, confident that we would never compare notes. But now we were doing exactly that. And the pattern was undeniable. She pulled up her texts and scrolled until she found what she was looking for. "This was the night he canceled on me last minute. He said his boss asked him to stay late." She passed me the phone and I skimmed the message. It was from 2 months ago. I grabbed my own phone, opened my texts, and scrolled to that same date. "Ryan, hey babe, I'm heading home early. Let's order in and have a movie night." I turned my phone so she could see. Her jaw tightened as she read the words. "What? He was with you?" She let out a slow breath. "I was crying over him that night, thinking I was being too clingy for being upset." That hit harder than I expected. I had been in love with this man. I had thought I knew him, that we had built something real together. Meanwhile, another woman had been sitting alone, wondering why she wasn't enough for him. I set my phone down, my grip tightening around the edge of the table. He's not as good at this as he thinks, clearly. She looked down at her hand, shaking her head. I can't believe I was so blind. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. Ryan had spent a decade lying to me, and I hadn't noticed either. He was charming, convincing, skilled at twisting the truth just enough to make it believable. He had done the same thing to both of us. She straightened. So, how do we do this? I had thought about it the moment she walked through my door. The old me, the woman I had been before she showed up, would have confronted him directly, demanded answers, maybe even given him the chance to weasel his way out of it. That wasn't happening now. We don't just expose him, I said. We take away his ability to lie. She leaned forward. Meaning? I tapped my phone against the table. We make it public. Ryan had spent years building a reputation. He was the good guy, the reliable one, the charming, funny, dependable man everyone liked. If I confronted him in private, he would spin the story. He would cry, apologize, make himself the victim. He had gotten away with this because he had control over the narrative. If I stripped that away, he'd have nothing. She met my gaze, understanding dawning in her eyes. So, we lay it all out? Every single detail. She placed a hand on her stomach, a slow smile forming. I like the way you think. We started with social media. I drafted a post. One that wasn't emotional, that didn't leave room for interpretation, just facts. How long he had been cheating, the lies he had told, the proof. We attached screenshots of his texts, his overlapping excuses, the messages where he promised her a future while building one with me. It was devastating. Once it was ready, I stared at the screen for a long moment, my finger hovering over the post button. Are you sure? She asked. I had never been more sure of anything in my life. I hit post. For the first 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then, the notifications started rolling in. Likes, comments, shares. People were reading it. And they weren't just reading it. They were reacting. The first comments were from my close friends. Why says oh? Are you serious? Oh my God, I can't believe this. I thought he was such a good guy. Then, the messages started. People I hadn't spoken to in months. Acquaintances who had only met Ryan once or twice. Even a few mutual friends. Some offered support, others had stories of their own. And that's when I realized we weren't the only ones. One message stood out from the rest. Hey, I don't know if this is the right time, but I think he did the same thing to me a few years ago. We were together for 6 months and he suddenly ghosted me. Then I saw wedding photos of him and realized he had been engaged the whole time. My stomach twisted. Ryan had been like this for years. I showed the message to her and she let out a bitter laugh. Of course he has. He didn't just wake up one day and decide to cheat. He's been doing this for as long as he could get away with it. More comments flooded in. People tagging their friends, sharing the post, making sure it spread. One of Ryan's coworkers commented, clearly shocked, "Wait, this is our Ryan? This can't be real." Someone else jumped in, "Oh, it's real. And apparently it's not even the first time." And then Ryan saw it. I knew the moment he did because my phone exploded with missed calls. He didn't leave voicemails, he just called over and over, like if he tried hard enough, I would eventually cave. When that didn't work, he switched to texts. Ryan, baby, please, don't do this. I can explain. Ryan, we need to talk. This is a huge misunderstanding. Ryan, you're ruining my life. I turned my phone off. He wasn't done, though. He must have realized I wasn't going to answer, so he tried her next. She showed me her screen, eyes narrowed as she read his messages. Ryan, I'm sorry, okay? This is all blown out of proportion. Can we please just talk, Ryan? You have no idea what you've done. She smirked, typing back a single response. Neither do you. Then she blocked his number. By the end of the day, everyone knew. His friends, his co-workers, even his family. His sister messaged me privately telling me she was sorry, that she had no idea what kind of person he really was. I believed her. She was always kind to me. But the best part? Someone at his job saw the post and sent it to his boss. That was when things really fell apart. Ryan had built his career on his reputation. He worked in an industry where image mattered, where trust was everything, and now his personal life was a public disaster. He was called into a meeting first thing the next morning, and by noon, the news had spread. He had been placed on leave while they reviewed concerns about his character. She and I sat across from each other at my kitchen table, drinking coffee while the updates rolled in. She lifted her mug, a satisfied gleam in her eyes. Well, that worked out nicely. I clinked my mug against hers. Cheers to karma. Ryan wanted to play games. He just lost everything. Ryan wasn't taking this well. By the next morning, I had more missed calls and texts than I could count. His messages ranged from desperate apologies to outright rage. "You're destroying my life. We can fix this if you just talk to me. You had no right to do this." I ignored every single one. He had spent years lying, cheating, and manipulating people to get what he wanted. Now he was finally facing consequences, and he couldn't handle it. His family saw the post, and I got a message from his mother. "I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. I never raised him to be this kind of man." That almost got to me. She was a good woman. She had always treated me like family, but Ryan had made his choices. He had disrespected me, lied to another woman, and tried to erase his responsibilities the second things got difficult. This was on him. Meanwhile, things at his job weren't looking good. The rumors spread fast, and within a day, I got confirmation that he had been called into a second meeting. Apparently, his company wasn't thrilled about one of their senior employees becoming the center of public drama. His job required trust, and right now, no one trusted him. Sophie, the woman from the post who had dated him years ago, messaged me again. "Guess what? I know someone at his job. HR is getting involved. Apparently he's being investigated for inappropriate behavior with female coworkers." I read the message twice, letting it sink in. Of course. Of course Ryan had been doing this at work too. The lying, the manipulation. It wasn't just in his relationships. He was always testing boundaries, seeing what he could get away with. And now he had finally gone too far. I told her to keep me updated. In the meantime, I focused on moving forward. The woman he had cheated with, his pregnant mistress, and I weren't suddenly best friends, but we stayed in touch. She was done with him, making her own plans for the future, and I respected that. She didn't ask for this mess any more than I did. 3 days after the post went up, Ryan showed up at my apartment. I didn't let him in. I didn't even open the door. I watched through the peephole as he stood there, running a hand through his hair, pacing back and forth like he was trying to figure out what to say. When I didn't answer, he started knocking, his voice muffled through the door. "Please, just talk to me." "I made a mistake, okay? We can fix this." I didn't move. He knocked again, more frantic this time. "You don't understand. They're threatening to fire me. Everything is falling apart, please." Ah, there it was. He wasn't here because he was sorry. He was here because he was losing. His job, his reputation, his ability to control the story, everything was slipping through his fingers. I took my phone and typed out one final message. "Me. You didn't care about the damage you caused until it affected you. Now you get to live with the consequences. Stay away from me." I pressed send and watched through the peephole as he read it. His face went pale, his body sagging like the weight of everything had finally hit him. Then, without another word, he turned and left. A week later, I found out he had been fired. His company didn't want the liability, not with the HR complaints stacking up and his name circulating in the worst possible way. He deleted his social media, probably hoping the whole thing would blow over, but it was too late. His friends knew, his family knew, everyone knew. As for me, I filed for divorce, packed up the life I had built with him, and walked away without looking back. He had expected me to stay, to forgive, to take him back like nothing had happened. Instead, I made sure that for the first time in his life, he had to face the full weight of his own choices. Ryan wanted to play games. Well, he just lost everything.